You might have noticed on TikTok more and more people claiming to be a bimbo. Some of them are proudly identifying as a bimbo. That's a loaded word and one that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Today on the podcast, we're getting into bimbo feminism and whether the bimbo can be reclaimed. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. All right, I want to talk about bimbos today, and the reason that we're having this conversation is because the word bimbo has been showing up a lot over the last couple of years. First, on TikTok, influencers went viral for calling themselves bimbos. You saw this a lot. They were dressed in all pink with corsets, long nails, hair extensions, the whole works. You had women, femmes, queer people, and anyone with a half-decent vocal fry making videos reclaiming the word. A word that most people would have thought, that's misogynistic. We don't say that anymore. The TikTok videos are satirical, they're political, and they were so everywhere that ID declared 2021 the year of the bimbo. And then came this.
Hi, Barbie.
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 Hi, Ken.
Hi, Barbie.
The biggest movie of the year has also been framed as a blockbuster for bimboism. Then last week, you had the trailer for Mean Girls, the musical, that dropped. Clearly, bimboism isn't going anywhere right now. I want to talk about all of this, the bimbofication of the internet, why people are reclaiming the word, what Barbie does or doesn't have to say about it, and where we go next. And to talk about all of these things, I've got the writers and culture critics. Rain Fisher-Kwan is here. Andrea Weirhunt is here. Rebecca Jennings is here. What's good, everybody? Welcome to the show. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I'm so excited to have this conversation. Listen, we are going to talk about this idea of reclaiming the word bimbo in just a moment. We're going to get into that in a moment. But Andrea, maybe you can start us off here. Can we talk about the traditional definition of the word? How we understood the concept of the bimbo?
Yes. So bimbo is definitely a term that has been used traditionally as a put down for women. It describes someone who is conventionally attractive and a potent combination of sexy and unintelligent. Aesthetically, it's usually associated with blonde hair, the color pink, a curvaceous body, lots of makeup, and revealing clothing. But it is important to state that the term bimbo is It's on a gender spectrum, so a conventionally attractive man who is also considered unintelligent may be called a himbo, and a non-binary person may be called a thembo.
Mm-hmm. And when we say that people are reclaiming bimbo, what is the reclamation happening? What are we reclaiming it from? Is it from that idea of the lack of intelligence? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, I think that there's this sense that people, especially women, might want to be sexy and intelligent at the same time. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of where the reclamation comes in, the empowerment comes in, is maybe it's possible that I can be hot and smart at the same time.
Hey, science is proving that is in fact actually possible. Okay, so people on TikTok started to take this understanding of the bimbo and then started making videos like this one.
Who is the Gen Z bimbo? A bimbo isn't dumb. I mean, she kind of is, but she isn't that dumb. She's actually a radical leftist who's pro-sex work, pro-Black Lives Matter, pro-LGBTQ, pro-choice, and will always be there for her girls, gays, and theys.
Rebecca, for people who have not heard of bimbo talk, can you describe what we just heard and what bimbo feminism online is?
Yeah. So what we just looked at was a hot blonde girl wearing a series of stereotypically bimbo-y outfits, like bikinis, miniskirts, pigtails, everything's pink, while also saying stuff that's leftist and progressive. Mm-hmm. And bimbo talk is this sort of subculture where, we're reclaiming this very hyper femme aesthetic that's normally associated with the stereotypes that Andrea just talked about, about dumb blondes who just care about lip gloss and looking cute and satirizing that. And obviously we have this expectation that when you dress like that, you're doing it for the male gaze, but the bimbo aesthetic leans so hard into that hyper femininity that it almost becomes artful and consequentially kind of repellent to the straight male gaze. And that's what makes it kind of subversive.
Shout out being repellent to the male gaze. Hey, Rebecca, why are people doing this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, it's fun and she looks really cute. But that's obviously more than that. I think it can be really subversive to say that, I'm hot and I'm a hot idiot in 2020s. I mean, women had expect so much of us and expects us to be all those things. And sometimes that's really hard. And I think this version of the bimbo is inherently inclusive of gender, of race, of body size, of sexuality. There is something subversive about, a fat person or someone who doesn't conform to gender expectations by saying like, I'm hot and I'm a bimbo, because it challenges those norms of like what we think of as hot and whatever. And I think there's also an element that's just that's very inherent to TikTok and social media, where it's like, there's an element that's just like an inside joke. If you look at someone who dresses like this and you think like, you look like a bimbo, it's like, well, yeah, I guess on one hand you're right, because they're literally calling themselves a bimbo, but that also just kind of proves that you don't get it. And, and that's kind of the fun of it. This is in-group joke of like, yeah, I am hot and an idiot, but like, because I look like this, you can't see it. And that means you're just like you don't get it.
Right. And the subversion kind of comes out in the idea of like, if you think that this is enough to put down women, then like you're really the problem. It's not me, and it was never me in the first place.
Right.
Rain, we've seen a lot of different kind of feminisms come up recently. Like of course there's liberal feminism, girl boss feminism, ecofeminism. They're all in a way reactions to their moment in time. What do you think it is about this moment in time that makes it ripe for bimbo feminism to come up?
Well, I think there's so many factors. I feel like there's like maybe too many factors to talk about completely. But I think a really big thing is like, when I was sort of growing up, when I was in high school, 2016, that kind of thing, I feel like it was really like the era of the girl boss. And I feel like the things that we were told consistently was that like the way to be empowered as a woman was to like succeed in the capitalist workplace.
That's like the lean-in feminism, the Sheryl Sandberg.
It was lean-in feminism.
Yes.
Yeah. It was like, get your seat at the table, get your seat in the boys' club, like learn how to lean in, act like men do, prioritize capitalist success over everything.
Right.
And it really involved, I think, there was still an element of maybe sort of like defiant femininity to it. Like it was like, it was pink washed. It was like the pantsuits were pink. But I think that it really involved kind of capitulating to a male standard of respectability. And I think maybe something that happened, I think there was just a general thing of like, we had that for a couple of years, and then a lot of women realized they were deeply unsatisfied and that they still weren't receiving respect in these workplaces, and that they had maybe sacrificed personal relationships and self-care and self-identity in the pursuit of seeking that kind of traditional respect. And then I think also it maybe has something to do with the pandemic and the fact that suddenly work was literally shut down and everybody was at home, and suddenly they couldn't access that kind of respectability through the workplace.
Right.
We'd spent so many years being told that the way to be empowered as women was through, capitalist success, was through workplace success. And then the pandemic literally took that out as an option effectively. And I think maybe that left a lot of women looking for something else.
Can I just say, when people talk about girl boss feminism, they don't say, I went through girl boss feminism. They say, like, I survived it. Like, there's like a real sense that like it took a toll on you to go through this like sort of like very structured kind of hustle culture. The idea like the demands of girl boss feminism are like that you retool all your aspirations to be, to kind of like look like this. Is that exhausting, Rain?
Absolutely. And I mean, also, I think fundamentally, a lot of women realized that it was a completely failed project. Like, I think that I mean, again, I was in high school, so I wasn't hustling that much, but it's a lot of work, and it's a kind of, it just adds another standard to this endless kind of barrage of standards that we're trying to fit into. And I think that we kind of entered this sort of nihilism. I think a lot of women entered this sort of gender nihilism where they were like, we worked so hard to try to do what we were supposed to do, and it didn't get us anywhere. Like, feminism made no material gains. The material position of women is no more liberated than it was 5 years ago. It was no more liberated than it was pre-Me Too. And I think that the kind of absurdism and sort of the campiness of the bimbo feminism movement, like, I think could be understood as sort of this nihilism post, like trying and seeing no material gains made for women.
Okay, I want to come back to that. I want to put a pin in that because I now want to talk about Barbie for a moment, Andrea. Barbie has been like this massive conversation point from like when the trailer showed up like a year ago to the movie to all of these moments. And the movie was sort of framed as this like reclamation of the bimbo stereotype. I hear you have really strong feelings about Barbie. Is Barbie a bimbo?
I do have strong opinions. Is Barbie a bimbo? She's a pretty boring bimbo as far as I'm concerned. You know, she like fits in certainly to that like the hyper femme aesthetic. Yes. I just want to say, though, I do think that it is fundamentally unfeminist that Ken was a more compelling character than Barbie in the Barbie movie. There was a mistake there made. And I think if she was really a fully fleshed out bimbo, she would have really owned the show there. But yeah, I think that's an expression of sexuality to me is an important function of bimboism. And without it, it's a sort of like neutered bimboism. Especially considering Barbie's origins, right? Like Barbie was modeled after a German toy designed for men based on a comic about a high-priced call girl. So like Ruth Handler saw this doll Lily and was like, I want to make this doll for children. And so Barbie actually has like sex worker bimbo origins that obviously in the 2-hour toy commercial that is the Barbie film, we were never going to get close to. And so like, there's still like more to unearth there. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of disappointed by Barbie and its feminism because I think all it really did was put more pink in people's closets.
Rebecca, where are you at with the Barbie movie and the idea that sort of where Barbie fits in on the spectrum of bimbos?
I mean, I think you have to think about Barbie as this like concept that is so personal to a lot of women, but also like people people younger than, I don't know, 35 or something, like how much Barbies did they really play with growing up? It's like, it's sort of this symbol for like this previous generation of women that I think is really meaningful to them. And I do think what the movie was trying to do was sort of explain to older people and children what feminism is. And I think in some ways it did kind of succeed in that way. You know, it's a very feminism 101, like, hey, women, like there's a lot of demands put on women and, you know, even Barbie, this like pinnacle of womanhood can't even achieve them. And I think in that way it was, you know, it was a really successful Hollywood film. That's how I think.
The way that you guys are like, it's fine. You know, it's fine. Barbie movie, sure, why not? Rain, I do feel like the movie gave us this opportunity, right? This moment to interrogate bimboism, hyperfemininity, feminism itself. And then like when people go, hey, this movie doesn't go far enough, a bunch of people on the internet did respond with you know what? I'm aware. Let me just enjoy this. Let me dress up and go to the movie. And Bimbo Talk is often characterized by that attitude, this idea of no thoughts, just vibes attitude. They're framing checking out as a revolutionary act. What's the case for checking out?
Well, what's the case for checking out? I mean, I don't think that checking out is a revolutionary act.
Okay.
I think that checking out is something that anyone can do sometimes, and that not everything women do necessarily has to be a revolutionary act. And I think sometimes those things can get confused where like, you know, women are doing something that they want to do, and then they feel like in order to justify that, they have to be like, well, it's feminist for me to do this, or it's revolutionary for me to do this. I think because like feminism has been so effectively commodified as an identity label, and we feel like bad people if we're not perfect feminists all the time. And I think really it might be much more meaningful if we just kind of said, well, maybe it's not the most classically feminist thing of me to do because feminism is like a radical liberatory movement of structure, but I want to check out and watch the Barbie movie.
Yes.
And I do think also, again, I think that it is this reaction to the demands that are placed on women. And again, I think kind of this moment of extreme nihilism and exhaustion. I mean, there have been so many material threats to women's autonomy recently. It feels like with the internet and with TikTok and everything, there have never been more demands placed on us. And I think a lot of women do just, I think, feel this exhaustion from and this feeling that they're being attacked on all sides, and they're being attacked by men for being feminine. And then sometimes I think it feels as though they're being attacked by other women for being feminine. And I think that can feel very understandably like a very exhausting thing. And I think it can feel like, you know, we can never do anything right. But I also do think that the Barbie was a hyper-capitalist toy commercial. And I think that critically engaging with the art that we consume is kind of imperative. And I really I don't know. I don't encourage people to check out when they're thinking about this stuff, because the media that we consume is very important. And
Right.
particularly the way it shapes gender expression is very important.
My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Today on the podcast, we're talking about bimbo feminism. Rain Fisher-Kwan is here. Andrea Weirhan is here. Rebecca Jennings is here. We've talked about this idea of bimboism being no thoughts, head empty sort of online thing. But when bimbos on TikTok have thoughts, they express them as girl talk. There's girl dinner, there's girl math, there's hot girl walk. Rebecca, can you talk about the satire in this and why people are putting girl in front of anything? This is not a girl question. This is just a regular question.
Oh, okay. This is my girl answer.
Lovely.
So for the past few years, people online have coined all these terms like girl dinner, girl math, hot girl walks. There's certain aesthetics like clean girl, visco girl. That's from all the way from 2019. Like strawberry girl, whatever. And these things are both jokes where it's like this is sort of an expression of what one girl does, and she's sort of like essentializing it, where it's like this is what girls do when they're alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this kind of way to connect with other women over the internet. But it's also a joke because these are obviously like not real things, and they're not exclusive to girls or women or whatever. And there's another irony in that most of the people that are coining these terms are probably in their 20s and 30s. They're not girls, they're women.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a reason why we don't say woman dinner or woman math, because when you think about, woman dinner, you think of this tired mom who's eating the scraps off her kids' plates and being annoyed that her husband isn't doing the dishes. Like that's what we're told that womanhood is. And that's not really appealing to a lot of us. And so much of our media, even as young women, I don't even know if we can call us young, or a lot of people that are engaging in this stuff is young, like, Margot Robbie and Taylor Swift, like the girls of our era, like they're both like 30-something-year-old women, like they are women.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. But there's a reason why we sort of claim the girl name, because in our culture, this idea of girlhood is so fetishized because girls have this whole world available to them. Women they've closed off those doors. Those doors are now, their kids and husbands or their career. Mm-hmm. And also society like despises women. We still root for girls. Girls have something like, there's an idea where you look at like a quote unquote girl and you're like, she could be anything. Whereas like a woman is just a woman. And there's this chance that you're still figuring yourself out as a girl. And I think a lot of women who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, who don't have these classical markers of womanhood, a husband, a kid, a really, really important job or something, or a house. And they still they still identify more with stories that are told about girls, because girls have options and they have uncertain futures, whereas a woman's future is kind of laid out for her. And I think that's why we are so, we really desire stories about girls, but what we're really looking for are stories about women who have the opportunities presented by girlhood.
Andrea, as someone who's not particularly engaged in girl TikTok or bimbofication TikTok, but you've been self-identifying as a bimbo for a long time before it was a TikTok trend, what is missing from this mainstream conversation about bimboism?
I think what's missing is an understanding that there is an erogenous zone between objectification and subjectification. That there can be something erotic in making oneself an object and being perceived as hot and sexy, while at the same time craving to be a subject who is understood and treated like a human being who is worthy of respect and dignity and love. I think typical depictions of the bimbo, say from the 90s and the 2000s, often feature these, beautiful, buxom, sexy women who inevitably are punished for their sexuality. Mm-hmm. And I think like the bimbo as a beautiful person who isn't punished, we haven't seen that. And so, I think about like Stormy Daniels, for instance. I see her as a bimbo hero because she's sexy. She's a sex worker. She's out there. She does not have sexual shame. And so someone like Donald Trump can be the king of misogynists and hurl every single insult as he can at her. But it's like she's Teflon. because she's a bimbo without sexual shame. That is hero stuff. Like, I would aspire to be that kind of a person, that kind of a bimbo who can be impervious to punishment because she has no sexual shame.
Mm-hmm. Rain, last word to you on all of this. We've talked about the way that bimbo feminists on TikTok are reclaiming the word as a rejection of girl boss feminism and appealing to the patriarchy. It's worth asking, is it working? Is that rejection working?
I have very complicated feelings about this, I think.
Great. I love complicated things. Let's go.
I think, as Rebecca said, like a fundamental thing that some people don't understand about girl talk and bimboism and girl math and girl dinner is that these things are jokes. And it's like a lot of the time, I think it's women joking about the way that men view us. It's us kind of playing with these characters that are assigned to us without our consent.
Sure.
And these are jokes that I make with my friends. These are jokes that I've always made with my friends. But I think sometimes, especially recently, I kind of think to myself, like, but whose joke is this? Like, and it's a feeling that I struggle with and that I don't even know where I land completely. But I think I struggle with the feeling that, like, these jokes that, like, women are idiots and we don't know how to make dinner for ourselves and we don't know how to do math. Like, you know, we're laughing at it because these jokes exist, but those aren't really our jokes. Those are men's jokes. And those are jokes that they make at our expense. And I think on the internet, there is a context collapse. Like, you know, there are jokes that when I make them in a room with all of my friends, we all know that we're smart and intelligent women, and we all know that we're self-sufficient, and we know that we're feminists. And we are aware of all of the context of how these jokes are playing with these roles and playing with these experiences.
On the internet.
On the internet, it's not so. On the internet, it's like to such a wide audience where that context doesn't exist. And where men can see it and where young girls can see it, and like young girls who haven't reckoned with these things. And I think that makes it really, really complicated. And I mean, something that I think about a lot is that I have never dressed more femininely. I've never dressed in more of kind of a bimbo archetype way than when I was studying math and physics at university. And because I think a fundamental part of the bimbo movement is that there's something fundamentally debasing about begging for respect. Like, and when you are a woman who tries to capitulate to this male standard of respectability, when you're trying to prove that you are smart in the way that men are smart, it feels embarrassing. It feels humiliating. It feels like you're begging on your knees for men to see you like a person. And I think there's something about dressing really femininely where it's kind of like a screw you. Like, it's kind of like I don't care about your respect. I don't care about you respecting me. But sorry, the last thing that I'll say is that, and so I dressed very femininely. I dressed in a way where I wanted to kind of spite these men for looking down on me. But then I also think I grappled with these questions where, like, if the form of liberation I'm being given is like a makeup profit for a makeup company that makes its business off of women's insecurities, like, can't there be a better form of liberation than that? Like, is that all the liberation I'm offered?
That is a huge question to pose at the end of this. I appreciate all of you guys being here. This is a lot to work through. I want to come back to this conversation, but in the meantime, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Andrea Wehrheim is a writer and sex worker. Her book, Modern Horror, is currently being made into a feature film. Rain Fisher-Kwan is a writer and culture critic. You can find her on Substack and online at Internet Princess. Rebecca Jennings is a senior correspondent at Vox who covers internet culture. Hey, so last night, Sarah Bernstein won the Giller Prize for her book, Study for Obedience. This is a big deal. The Giller Prize is the biggest book prize in the country. I was there last night, and let me tell you, her win was notable for a couple of reasons. One, she won 10 days after giving birth. Sarah's from Montreal, but she did her acceptance speech from her home in northern Scotland, which means it was 3 a.m. when she gave that speech. But the second reason that her win was notable is that last night's award ceremony was interrupted by protesters. Actually, it was interrupted by protesters twice, once at the start and once at the end. Those protesters were there criticizing Scotiabank for investing in an Israeli arms manufacturer. Scotiabank is the title sponsor of the prize. Listen, I was at table 3. We were in the very first row of tables, and I was watching these protesters. And as I was watching them and watching Rick Mercer, who was hosting, trying to keep the show going, I was thinking about the relationship between art and commerce. I think we've grown really used to sponsors and commerce being involved very closely in art. For example, you can think of the Toronto International Film Festival. It has had this long relationship with Bell as its title sponsor for the last few years. Scotiabank sponsored the Giller Prize. Look, you see this all the time. The Taylor Swift Eras Tour presented by Capital One. The Pepsi halftime show. If you don't align with the values of a major sponsor of art, I think it creates tension, right? On the one hand, this is how so many artists can keep doing their work. And on the other, how does your relationship to art change if you want to love that art, but not necessarily its sponsor? I don't have answers for you. The tension between art and commerce wasn't born on the stage last night. It is centuries old. But it is worth, I think, giving the last word of the night to the person who labored on that art. So here's Sarah Bernstein's acceptance speech.
I'm so sorry I can't be there with you tonight. I'm at home with my 10-day-old baby who's right next to me. But my brother is there representing. Study for Obedience is a book that thinks through the past and present entanglements of people who have lived alongside one another, and how powerful are the stories people tell about themselves and their own histories. Thank you.
That is Sarah Bernstein. Last night she won the Giller Prize. This is a huge deal. It is $100,000 for the winner. And that is it for the podcast today. Remember, you can listen to any episode of Commotion anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you don't mind, follow us on Instagram. We are at Commotion CBC. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. Hey, I'm going to be here tomorrow. And if you're going to be here tomorrow, I'll see you then.